The silent observers, the stars around orbital station, 7 burned cold and distant, their light millions of years old by the time it reached the observation deck. Captain James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the tactical display show another skirmish between the Vorn Empire and the Krell Federation. Red and blue dots danced across the screen, each representing a ship carrying thousands of lives. Each dot that vanished meant another tragedy in a war that had lasted 300 years. "Sir, the Vorn fleet is moving toward the mining station," Lieutenant Tom Harris reported from his position at the sensor console. The young officer's voice carried a hint of worry that Walker shared but couldn't show. The year 2387 had brought many changes to the galaxy, but the ancient war between the Vorn and Krell remained constant. These two races, each controlling hundreds of star systems, had been locked in combat over the resource-rich sectors of the Orion, armed since before humanity had even achieved faster-than-light travel. Their ships were massive, their weapons powerful, and their pride unmeasurable. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago. In the grand scale of galactic civilization, humanity was an infant. The other races, especially the Vorn and Krell, viewed humans as curiosities at best, pets at worst. The council meetings were exercises in humiliation, where human representatives sat quietly while ancient races decided the fate of star systems. "Captain, the mining station is transmitting distress signals," Harris continued, his fingers flying over his console. "They're requesting immediate assistance." Walker's jaw tightened. Mining Station Delta 4 sat just outside the Sol System's outer colonies. 3,000 human civilians worked there, extracting rare minerals from asteroids. They were neutral, non-combatants by every law the Galactic Council had established. "Open a channel to the Vorn Fleet Commander," Walker ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the reptilian face of Commander Vex. His scales were dark purple, a sign of his advanced age and high rank. His 4 eyes focused on Walker with barely concealed amusement. "Ah, the human captain calls," Vex said, his translator giving his words a mocking tone. "What does the little mammal want?" "We are conducting military operations." Commander Vex, Mining Station Delta 4, is a civilian installation. There are 3,000 non-combatants aboard. I request you alter your attack vector to avoid. Vex's laughter cut him off. It was a sound like grinding metal. "Request? You request? Little human, this is war. Your people should not have built so close to contested space. If they die, it is their own stupidity." The channel closed. Walker's hands clenched into fists as he watched the Vorn ships open fire. Plasma bolts, each one the size of a city block, slammed into the mining station. The structure's shields held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. The station broke apart like a toy thrown against a wall. "Life pod launches detected," Harris whispered. "Maybe a few hundred made it out." "Vorn ships are targeting the life pods," another officer reported. Walker watched in horror as the red dots swept through the cloud of escape pods. Each small flash on the screen represented dozens of human lives ending in the cold vacuum of space. Men, women, children who had come to the frontier to build better lives. Now nothing but frozen corpses floating among the debris. "Sir, Earth Command is calling," the communications officer announced. Admiral Lisa Stone's face appeared on a side screen. Her usually composed expression showed cracks of rage that matched Walker's own feelings. "Captain, I'm ordering all Earth ships to stand down. Do not engage. Admiral, they're slaughtering civilians." "I know, Captain. But the Council has made it clear. Any human military action will be considered an act of war against the entire Galactic Council. We're to evacuate our remaining colonies in the contested zones." Walker slammed his fist on his command chair's armrest. "They're killing our people. And if we fight back, "He'll kill all of us," Stone replied, though her voice suggested she hated the words as much as Walker did. "The Vorn have 5,000 warships. We have 200. Stand down, Captain." "That's an order." The channel closed. Walker stood frozen as the last life pod signal winked out. 3,000 human souls, gone in less than 10 minutes. And the Vorn fleet was already moving on, as if they had done nothing more than swat insects. "Sir," Harris said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." The elderly face of Counselor Thren appeared. The alien's long, thin features showed what might have been sympathy, though it was hard to tell with his species. "Captain Walker, the Council has reviewed the incident. While regrettable, the mining station was in disputed territory. The humans are advised to withdraw from all frontier regions for their own safety. Counselor, they targeted life pods. That's a war crime by your own laws. The Vorn Empire has been censured," Thren replied, with the tone of someone discussing weather. "They will receive an official reprimand. The matter is closed." Walker wanted to scream. A reprimand. 3,000 dead humans earned the Vorn a strongly worded letter. 3 days later, the situation worsened. Walker was back on duty when the medical ship Hope's Journey appeared on the sensors. The vessel was clearly marked with medical symbols recognized across the galaxy, its white hull bearing the Red Cross of Healing. It carried supplies for human refugees fleeing the frontier colonies. The Krell strike force appeared from hyperspace without warning. 50 warships, their hulls gleaming silver in the starlight, surrounded the medical ship. "This is Captain Walker to Krell Fleet. That is a medical vessel on a humanitarian mission. It is protected under the Krell Commander." A being that looked like a mass of crystalline structures formed into a vaguely humanoid shape appeared on screen. "Humans should not be here. You were warned at the Council. This space belongs to the strong." The Krell ships fired simultaneously. The medical ship didn't have military shields. It vaporized instantly, along with its crew of 200 and the supplies meant for 50,000 refugees. This time, Walker didn't wait for permission. He opened a direct channel to Earth Command, to President David Park himself. The president's face was grim as Walker reported what had happened. "They're laughing at us," Walker said. "Both the Vorn and Krell. They call us the galaxy's pets. They think we're too weak to matter." President Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made history. "Captain Walker, return to Earth immediately. All ships are being recalled." "Sir?" They expected no interference from humanity. They calculated that we would accept these losses rather than fight a war we couldn't win. The president's expression hardened. They calculated wrong. Asterisk the unexpected arsenal, the underground bunker beneath Mount Cheyenne, stretched for miles in every direction. President David Park walked through corridors that hummed with activity, scientists and military officers moving with purpose. They had been preparing for this day for 50 years. Though they had hoped it would never come, Dr. Anna Chun stood before a massive holographic display, her small frame dwarfed by the projection of weapon systems floating in the air. She turned as the president approached, her eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and grim determination. "Mr. President," she said, bowing slightly, "Project Prometheus is ready." Park studied the display. Where alien races had relied on massive energy shields and plasma weapons for millennia, humanity had taken a different path. "Show me," he said, asterisk. Anna waved her hand, and the display zoomed in on a small missile, no bigger than a human torso. The aliens trust their shields completely. They've had the same technology for thousands of years. Their shields work by creating an energy barrier that disperses incoming energy. She smiled coldly. But they never considered old-fashioned kinetic weapons. This missile carries a miniaturized nuclear warhead. It's too small for their shields to recognize as a threat. It passes right through. How many do we have? Each of our 200 ships has been retrofitted with 5,000 units. That's 1 million nuclear weapons, Mr. President. In another section of the bunker, Commander Robert Black demonstrated the second surprise. The room was filled with military officers watching a simulation on a tactical display. Thousands of small dots swarmed around larger shapes representing alien warships. The swarm protocol, Black announced. Every human ship now carries 10,000 AI-controlled drone fighters. They're small, fast, and smart. Each one can make independent targeting decisions while coordinating with the swarm. General Susan Moore, head of Earth's military forces, watched the simulation with interest. The aliens fight with massive ships in formation battles. They've never faced anything like this. Because they never needed to innovate, Black replied. When your technology works for 10,000 years, why change? But humans? We've gone from horses to spaceships in 3 centuries. Innovation is what we do. The president gathered his senior staff in the war room. Admiral Lisa Stone appeared on the main screen from her flagship, the Vengeance. Behind her, Captain James Walker and dozens of other ship commanders waited on their own screens. The galaxy thinks we're weak, Park said. They're about to learn otherwise. Admiral Stone, you have permission to begin Operation Retribution. Stone nodded sharply. All ships, prepare for combat. Captain Walker, you have the honor of first strike. Walker's face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. Understood, Admiral. We'll make them remember Delta 4. The Vorn military outpost at Kepler 442 was a fortress in space. 100 warships protected the massive station that served as a supply hub for their entire sector. Commander Vex himself commanded from here, the same alien who had laughed while destroying the mining station. Vex was enjoying his evening meal when alarms began screaming. He rushed to the command center, his 4 eyes widening as he saw the sensor readings. 10 human ships approaching, his tactical officer reported. They're not even trying to hide. Vex laughed, that same grinding metal sound. 10 ships? Against our 100? The mammals have gone insane. All ships prepared to fire. Let's end this quickly. Captain Walker stood on his bridge, watching the Vorn fleet arrange itself into attack formation. Distance to target? 500,000 kilometers and closing, Lieutenant Tom Harris replied. Launch the swarm. The 10 human ships seemed to explode. But instead of debris, clouds of drone fighters poured out. 10,000 from each ship. 100,000 total. They moved like a school of fish, flowing around each other in perfect coordination, accelerating toward the Vorn fleet. Vex stopped laughing. What? What is that? Unknown contacts, Commander. Thousands, tens of thousands of them. Fire! Fire everything! The Vorn ships unleashed their plasma weapons. Massive bolts of energy, each one capable of destroying a city, flew toward the drone swarm. But hitting the drones was like trying to stop a sandstorm with a sword. For every drone destroyed, 100 more took its place. The swarm reached the Vorn fleet. The drones didn't use energy weapons. They used simple kinetic missiles and nuclear warheads. The Vorn shields, designed to stop massive plasma bolts, couldn't stop thousands of small projectiles. A first Vorn ship exploded. Then another. And another. Shields failing. Vex's officer screamed. They're everywhere. We can't target them all. Walker watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. All ships launch nuclear missiles. Target their station. 5,000 missiles streaked through space. The Vorn tried to shoot them down, but they were too busy dying under the drone assault. The missiles reached the station. The explosions could be seen from planets a light year away. In 20 minutes, the entire Vorn outpost was gone. 100 warships and a station that had stood for 1,000 years, reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Across the galaxy, every race watched through sensor feeds. The Galactic Council held an emergency session, voices raised in panic and disbelief. The Krell Federation reacted first. Their leadership, ancient beings of living crystal, gathered in their capital. The humans must be stopped before they grow stronger, the Prime Krell declared. Send 500 ships. Crush them completely. The Krell fleet found Admiral Stone waiting for them near Jupiter. 30 human ships against 500. The Krell commander broadcast a message to the galaxy. Watch as we end the human threat. They had one lucky victory. It will not happen again. Stone appeared on every screen in the galaxy, her face calm. You killed our medical ship. You laughed at our dead civilians. She paused. Now face our soldiers. The human ships released something new. Thousands of small objects that looked like ordinary space debris. The Krell fleet passed right through them, shields ignoring what appeared to be harmless junk. The EMP mines activated simultaneously. Every Krell shield flickered and died. For beings who had relied on shields for 10,000 years, it was like suddenly losing their skin. Shields down. All ships, shields are. The drone swarms were already launching. 300,000 AI fighters descended on the defenseless Krell fleet. Nuclear explosions lit up Jupiter's orbit like a new sun being born. The Krell fled. Out of 500 ships, less than 50 escaped. The survivors spread word across the galaxy. The humans had weapons that bypassed shields, tactics that defied conventional warfare, and a rage that burned hotter than any star. In the Galactic Council chambers, Counselor Thren watched the footage in silence. Other races whispered in fear. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. And they were just getting started. The human doctrine that captured Vorn. Commander sat in the interrogation room aboard the human battleship Liberty. His purple scales had turned pale, a sign of fear among his species. Across from him, General Mark Johnson studied the alien with calm eyes. The human general was old by human standards, his hair white, his face lined with years of experience. You don't understand, the Vorn commander said, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. War has rules. Ancient rules. You attack military targets, fight for honor, take resources. You humans, you're barbarians. Johnson leaned back in his chair. Let me tell you about human history, Commander. We've had thousands of wars on our single planet. World wars that killed millions. We learned something your species never did. What? War isn't a game. It's not about honor or glory. It's about winning, completely, permanently, so the enemy never threatens you again. The alien shuddered. But the infrastructure, the shipyards, the supply stations, those are civilian targets. There are no civilians in total war, Johnson replied. Your empire made that decision when you killed our non-combatants. Now you face the consequences. Across human-controlled space, the new doctrine was being implemented. Where the Vorn and Krell fought ritualized battles for specific systems, humans struck everywhere at once. Supply convoys found themselves under attack by single human ships that appeared from hyperspace, launched drone swarms, and vanished. Communication relays went dark across entire sectors. Shipyards that had built warships for millennia burned in nuclear fire. On the planet Vorn Prime, panic was spreading. The capital city's shields flickered as power stations across the planet failed. Not from direct attack, the humans hadn't fired a single shot at the planet. But every supply ship bringing fuel had been destroyed. Every orbital platform that processed energy was gone. The planet was dying slowly, strangled by the destruction of everything that kept it alive. The Krell were fearing no better. Admiral Stone had divided her fleet into small hunter-killer groups. 5 ships here, 3 there, never staying in one place, long enough for the enemy to respond. They called it submarine warfare, though the Krell didn't understand the reference to Earth's oceans. Lieutenant Emma White commanded the Cyber Warfare Division from Earth. Her teams had spent months studying captured alien computer systems. The Vorn and Krell had advanced technology, but their cybersecurity was ancient. Why protect against hacking when no one had attempted it in 10,000 years? We're in their defense network, Emma reported to President Park. Every military communication, every ship movement, we see it all. Can you disrupt them? Emma smiled. We can do better. We can make them see things that aren't there. The Battle of Rigel showed the power of combined tactics. The Vorn had gathered 300 ships to retake a vital fuel depot. They detected a massive human fleet approaching 200 ships according to their sensors. They formed defensive positions and prepared for a conventional battle. Colonel Jack Brown watched from the surface of Rigel's moon with his Marine battalion. The Navy's putting on quite a show, he said to his second-in-command, Major Alex Taylor. In space, the Vorn fired at the approaching human fleet. Their weapons passed through empty space. The fleet was an illusion, false signals created by Emma's cyber teams. The real attack came from below. Brown's Marines had spent 3 days planting nuclear charges on asteroids around the moon. They detonated simultaneously. Thousands of rock fragments, accelerated by nuclear explosions, slammed into the Vorn fleet from an unexpected angle. Ships designed to withstand energy weapons crumpled like paper under the kinetic bombardment. The 10 real human ships that had been hiding behind the moon's sensor shadow emerged, launching their drone swarms at the confused and damaged Vorn fleet. In 30 minutes, 300 Vorn ships became floating scrap metal. But humanity showed another face, too. After every battle, human medical ships arrived. They rescued survivors from both sides, treating injured aliens with the same care as human wounded. The galaxy watched in confusion as human doctors worked desperately to save the lives of enemies who had tried to kill them hours before. Why? A wounded Krell officer asked Dr. Sarah Williams as she treated his injuries. We are enemies. You're a soldier following orders, she replied, adjusting the medical equipment, keeping him alive. The war is with your leadership, not with you personally. Besides, the living can tell others what happened here. The dead tell no stories. The psychological impact was devastating. Vorn and Krell soldiers began to refuse orders to attack human medical ships. Some even began to surrender rather than fight, knowing they would receive better treatment as prisoners than they would from their own governments if they retreated. After 3 months of constant attacks, the Vorn Empire had lost 40% of its military capacity. Not just ships, entire sectors of infrastructure were gone. Shipyards that had taken centuries to build were radioactive ruins. Supply lines that had existed since before humans discovered fire were severed. The Vorn Emperor himself decided to lead a counterattack. He gathered 2,000 ships, the largest fleet assembled in a generation. His plan was simple: overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers. Admiral Stone received the intelligence from Emma's cyber teams a week in advance. She recalled every human ship, all 200, to a single point, the Vega system, where the Emperor's fleet would have to pass through. They think numbers will save them, Stone told her commanders. They're about to learn why humans study history. Captain Walker, you remember Thermopylae? Walker grinned coldly. A narrow pass where numbers mean nothing. The Vega system had a unique feature, a dense asteroid field that ships had to navigate slowly. Stone's fleet seeded it with something new: stealth nuclear mines, invisible to sensors, programmed to activate when surrounded by enemy ships. The Emperor's fleet entered the asteroid field confident in their numerical superiority. They detected the human fleet waiting on the other side, only 200 ships against their 2,000. The Emperor himself broadcast a message: "Surrender, humans. You fought well, but you cannot defeat the combined might of the Vorn Empire." Stone responded with 2 words: "Remember Delta IV." The nuclear mines activated, hundreds of them hidden among the asteroids. The explosions created a chain reaction, turning the asteroid field into a death trap. Vorn ships slammed into each other, trying to escape. Debris from destroyed vessels blocked escape routes. The organized fleet became a chaotic mass of dying ships. The human fleet attacked from all sides. Drone swarms poured through the gaps between asteroids. Nuclear missiles found targets blinded by their own exploding allies. Marine boarding teams, led by Colonel Brown, captured intact ships and turned their weapons against their own fleet. The Emperor's flagship, the ancient Pride of Vorn, found itself surrounded. Brown's Marines had studied every detail of Vorn ship design. They knew exactly where to place breaching charges, exactly which corridors to take to reach the bridge. The Emperor, a being who had ruled for 300 years, found himself facing a human Marine sergeant named Mike Davis. The human was half the Emperor's size, but the gun in his hand didn't care about size differences. "You destroyed everything," the Emperor said. "Thousands of years of civilization." "You destroyed a mining station with 3,000 civilians," Davis replied. "You laughed about it. Now who's laughing?" The Emperor's capture broke the Vorn Empire. Within days, remaining Vorn commanders were requesting peace terms. They agreed to every human demand: reparations for the destroyed mining station, limitations on military forces, and human observers in their government. The galaxy watched humanity's victory with a mixture of awe and terror. These weren't the weak newcomers they had dismissed. These were predators who had learned to wage war in ways no one had imagined. The Krell's last. Stand the Prime Krell's crystalline form pulsed with desperate energy as he addressed the Galactic Council. His body, usually a brilliant silver, had turned dark with stress. The other council members watched from their seats, none willing to meet his gaze directly. "The humans are galactic terrorists," the Prime Krell declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "They destroy civilian infrastructure. They use nuclear weapons. They must be stopped before they conquer us all." Councillor Thren of the Altarian Republic stood slowly. His thin frame seemed fragile, but his voice was firm. "The Krell Federation killed human civilians first. You laughed at their protests. You called them pets. They were weak." The Prime Krell shouted. They had no right to defend themselves? This came from Ambassador Reek of the Rillan Union, a small, furry being whose people had suffered under Krell oppression for centuries. "For 500 years you ignored our pleas when you raided our colonies. The humans lost 3,000 civilians and brought your empire to its knees in 3 months." The Prime Krell looked around the chamber. The Zepton Collective, the Merino Confederation, dozens of minor races none would meet his eyes. They all remembered how the Krell had treated them when they were powerful. "You cowards," the Prime Krell hissed. "When the humans come for you, remember this moment." Ambassador Reek stood. "The humans already contacted us. They offered us defense treaties, technology sharing, and trade agreements. They asked for nothing in return, except that we treat all species with respect." He paused. "They offered protection. You offered only oppression." The Prime Krell left the council in rage. If the galaxy wouldn't help, the Krell would face the humans alone. He sent orders to every corner of the Federation, all ships, every single warship, cargo vessel, and even training craft were to gather at Sigma Prime. the Krell's most fortified system. 3,000 ships answered the call. It was the largest fleet in recorded galactic history. On Earth, President David Park studied the intelligence reports. He stood in the war room with his senior staff, looking at the holographic display of Sigma Prime. The system was a nightmare for attackers' 3 stars. In close orbit created gravity wells that made navigation dangerous. And ancient defense platforms surrounded every approach. "They've gathered everything," General Mark Johnson reported. "If we lose this battle, we won't have the numbers to continue the war. How many ships can we field?" Park asked. "All 200. Admiral Stone replied from her flagship. "But Mr. President, I recommend you take personal command. The galaxy needs to see that Earth's leader doesn't hide behind others." Park nodded. Within hours, he was aboard the battleship Earth's Revenge, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. As they traveled through hyperspace, he addressed not just his fleet, but the entire galaxy. "We didn't seek this war. We came to the stars hoping for peace, for friendship. Instead, we found empires that viewed compassion as weakness, mercy as stupidity. They killed our civilians and laughed. Today, that laughter ends." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sigma Prime system. 3,000 Krell ships waited in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of 3 stars. It was beautiful and terrifying. The Prime Krell broadcast to the galaxy. "Witness the end of human aggression. They are outnumbered 15 to 1. Watch them burn." President Park stood on his bridge, calm despite the odds. "All ships deploy antimatter torpedoes." Humanity had saved this weapon for last. Each torpedo contained antimatter harvested over decades, contained in magnetic fields. When those fields collapsed, the result was pure energy release, more powerful than any nuclear weapon. 200 human ships launched 10 torpedoes each. 2,000 points of light streaked toward the Krell fleet. The Krell tried to shoot them down, but the torpedoes were small, fast, and shielded. They reached the Krell formation and detonated. The explosions were visible from planets in neighboring systems. Each torpedo released energy equivalent to a small star. Krell ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. The perfect formation became chaos as survivors tried to escape the expanding spheres of destruction. "All ships launch drone swarms," Park ordered. "Show no mercy." 2 million drones poured into space. But the Krell still had over 2,000 ships remaining, and they fought with desperate fury. Plasma beams filled space like a deadly light show. Human ships began taking damage, shields failing under the concentrated fire. The Washington exploded, taking 5,000 human lives with it. The Moscow lost half its structure to a plasma beam. The Beijing reported critical damage. For 18 hours, the battle raged. It was the longest continuous engagement in galactic history. Both sides threw everything they had at each other. Nuclear explosions, plasma beams, kinetic projectiles, and antimatter detonations turned space into hell. When the human fleet was reduced to just 50 operational ships, Park thought they might actually lose. The Krell still had 500 ships fighting. His antimatter torpedoes were exhausted. His drone swarms were depleted. Then sensors detected new arrivals. Ships emerged from hyperspace, but they weren't human. The Rillan Union had sent 30 ships. The Zepton Collective brought 50. The Marino Confederation arrived with 20. Even the tiny Bellic Republic sent their 5 patrol boats. Ambassador Reek's voice crackled over the communications. "President Park, the minor races stand with humanity. You showed us that giants can fall." More ships arrived. Races that had been oppressed, ignored, and dismissed for millennia came to humanity's aid. They didn't have advanced weapons or sophisticated tactics. But they had numbers and determination. The Krell found themselves surrounded. Their formation, already damaged from hours of combat, collapsed completely. Some tried to flee, only to find minor race ships blocking their escape. Others surrendered, broadcasting distress signals. The Prime Krell's flagship, the massive Crystal Throne, tried to ram the Earth's revenge in a final act of defiance. Colonel Jack Brown's Marines were ready. They had captured several Krell ships intact and learned their weak points. "Target their power cores," Brown ordered from his assault shuttle. "We take that ship intact." Marine shuttles swarmed the Crystal Throne like insects on a dying giant. Breaching charges opened holes in its crystal hull. Marines poured in, fighting through corridors filled with desperate Krell soldiers. Brown himself led the assault on the bridge. The Prime Krell stood there, his crystalline body cracked and dim. "You've destroyed everything," he said. "The Krell Federation is finished." "You destroyed yourselves," Brown replied, "the moment you decided our lives didn't matter." The Prime Krell's surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. The remaining Krell ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over as medical ships from a dozen races moved in to rescue survivors. President Park stood on his damaged bridge. They had started with 200 ships. Only 50 remained operational. But they had one. Captain Walker, his ship scarred but intact, sent a private message to Park. "Mr. President, we've received surrender offers from every remaining Krell world. They're asking for terms." Park looked at the devastation around Sigma Prime. Thousands of ships destroyed, millions of lives lost. "Tell them to send representatives to Earth. It's time to build something better from these ashes." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans weren't the weak newcomers everyone had assumed. They were survivors, innovators, and when pushed, the most dangerous species in known space. The new Order, the Great Hall on Earth, had never hosted so many alien species. Representatives from both fallen empires and dozens of minor races gathered in what was once the United Nations building, now expanded to accommodate beings of all sizes and environments. President David Park stood at the central podium, his face showing the exhaustion of months of war, but his eyes remained sharp. The Vorn delegation sat to his left, their purple scales dull with defeat. The Krell representatives to his right, their crystalline forms barely glowing. Both empires that had once controlled thousands of systems now waited for a species they had dismissed as pets to decide their fate. "We could destroy you," Park began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "We could take your worlds, your resources, everything you value. Many here would say you deserve it." The new Vorn Emperor, young and untested after his father's capture, shifted nervously. The Prime Krell's replacement, a smaller crystal being named Zek, remained perfectly still. "But that's not who we are," Park continued. "Humanity doesn't seek conquest. We seek justice." He activated a holographic display showing the terms. First, reparations. Both empires will pay compensation to every race affected by your wars. Not just humans, everyone you've hurt over the centuries. Ambassador Reek of the Rillan Union made a sound of surprise. His people had never expected to receive anything for their centuries of suffering. Second, military limitations. Your fleets will be reduced to defensive forces only. 500 ships maximum. No offensive weapons, no antimatter, no nuclear arsenals. Human observers will be stationed in your military commands to ensure compliance. The Vorn Emperor started to protest, but Park raised his hand. "These are not negotiations. These are terms. Accept them, or face complete dismantlement of your governance." Third, Park continued, "the disputed territories you fought over for 300 years are now neutral space. They belong to no one and everyone. Any race can mine, settle, or travel there freely under the protection of a joint fleet. Counselor Thren stood from his observer position. Who will command this joint fleet? Admiral Lisa Stone entered the hall, now wearing new insignia. I will, she announced. The Galactic Council has asked humanity to lead a combined defense force. We've accepted. The implications were clear. Humans would become the galaxy's police, the protectors of peace. The two empires that had dominated for millennia were now subordinate to a race that had only achieved spaceflight centuries ago. Over the following weeks, the transformation was remarkable. Human technology, instead of being hoarded, was shared freely. Small races that had never been able to defend themselves suddenly had access to drone swarms and shield-breaking weapons. Human military academies opened their doors to all species. Captain James Walker found himself teaching at the new Galactic Defense Academy on Mars. His students included young Vorn, Krell, Rillans, and dozens of other species. On the first day, he stood before them with a simple message. War is not about honor or glory. It's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. You're here to learn not how to conquer, but how to defend. One young Krell student raised a crystalline appendage. Captain, why do humans fight so differently? Walker pulled up a display of Earth. Look at our homeworld. Every continent has predators. Our weather includes hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. We evolved surrounded by death. We didn't have paradise worlds like most of you. We had to fight for every day of survival. He changed the display to show human history. We fought each other for resources, land, ideology. We made weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We almost did destroy it several times. But we learned. We learned that the best way to ensure peace is to be so strong that no one dares break it. The new order wasn't without challenges. Some Vorn and Krell military officers attempted a rebellion 6 months later. They gathered 100 hidden ships and attacked a human supply convoy. The response was swift and brutal. Colonel Jack Brown's Marine Quick Response Force reached the rebels in 12 hours. The new drone swarms, now upgraded with minor race improvements, tore through the rebel fleet in minutes. There were no survivors. Brown broadcast a message to both empires. This is your only warning. Test us again, and your worlds will burn. Asterisk, there were no more rebellions. On Earth's moon, a monument was constructed. It was visible from every ship that approached. Earth. The names of the 3,000 civilians killed at Mining Station Delta 4 were engraved in letters 50 feet high. Below them, the 200 crew members of the medical ship Hope's Journey. Every human life lost to start the war was remembered dot at the bottom. In even larger letters was a simple inscription. They expected no interference. They received total war. Every diplomat, trader, and visitor who came to Earth saw those words. They became the most famous phrase in galactic history. A reminder of what happened when humanity was pushed too far. A year after the war ended, a celebration was held on Space Station Unity, built where the first battle had taken place. Children from all races played together in the recreation areas. Vorn younglings chased Rillan pups, while human children taught Krell youngsters how to play soccer with a specially designed crystal ball. Asterisk. Dr. Sarah Williams, now head of the Galactic Medical Exchange, watched the children with satisfaction. This is what we fought for, she told her colleague, a Vorn doctor she had once treated as a prisoner. Not conquest, but this peace, cooperation, a future where our children don't have to fear each other. The Vorn doctor, his scales now a healthy purple, nodded. Your race is strange. You wage war more terribly than any we've seen, yet you build peace more carefully than anyone imagined. 50 years later, the galaxy had been transformed. The peace of Earth, as historians called it, had lasted without a single major conflict. Minor disputes were settled by human mediators. Pirates and raiders found themselves facing human-led task forces that struck without warning and showed no mercy. Admiral Walker, old now and retired, sat in a garden on Earth with his grandchildren. A young Vorn historian had come to interview him for a book about the war. Why did humans fight so hard? The historian asked. You were outnumbered, outgunned, with no chance of survival. Why didn't you run? Walker looked at his grandchildren, one human, one adopted Rillan, playing together. Every species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that gave them what they needed. When things got tough, they could migrate to better areas. But Earth? Earth tried to kill us every day. He pointed to the sky where Earth's moon hung. We evolved surrounded by predators that wanted to eat us, disasters that wanted to bury us, diseases that wanted to destroy us. We learned early that when you're threatened, you don't run. You don't negotiate. You don't hope for mercy. Then what do? The historian asked. Walker's eyes, still sharp despite his age, looked directly at the alien. You fight. You fight with everything you have, using every tool, every trick, every advantage. You fight until the threat is gone. Not diminished, not discouraged, gone. And then you make sure it never comes back. The historian was quiet for a moment. And if you hadn't won? Walker smiled coldly. Then we would have made sure they remembered us. If humanity was going to fall, we would have taken both empires with us. They thought we were too weak to matter. They were wrong. The garden was peaceful. Children's laughter echoed across the grass. Ships from 100 races passed overhead in harmony. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's friendship was precious, their protection absolute, and their anger terrible. They expected no interference. They received total war. And from that war, 1,000 years of peace was born. Asterisk.